I just want to make a quick video. I've not been very well over the past couple of days, but I've obviously seen the news of President Nelson's passing on Sunday, which was really sad. To see President Nelson pass, although he was 101, I thought he was going to make it to this general conference, but rest in peace, President Nelson. And I appreciate his time as prophet and president of the church. I know he's got a lot of criticism and flack for certain changes he's made, but some of his conference talks have been really profound to me, particularly the one he gave on peacemaking a couple of years ago, about trying to be a peacemaker and to avoid contention and division and animosity, particularly in our online behaviors. As well, a talk he gave, Faith to Move Mountains, back in 2021, which was really impactful whenever I was again struggling in my faith and before a decision to get married, and that talk was meaningful to me. So rest in peace, President Nelson. I think it's just awful that that same day to hear about the attack on the church in Michigan. I'll read for any people who have not followed or are not aware. I'm sure most people are. Got this from Wikipedia. On the morning of September 28th, 2025, a mass shooting and arson attack occurred at a meeting house of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc Township, Michigan, United States. The perpetrator was a 40-year-old Thomas Jacob Sanford. He rammed his pickup truck through a brick wall at the front of the chapel before opening fire on the worshippers inside. A fire reportedly set by Sanford engulfed the building, destroying most of it and killing two members of the congregation. In total, four church members were killed and eight injured. Of the injured, one was admitted to the hospital in critical condition, while the other seven were reported as stable. Authorities initially said more victims might be found in the burned church, but later concluded that all had been accounted for. Sanford was killed by police at the scene within 8 minutes of the attack. I also have heard about, I believe it was one of the councillors in the bishopric and another member who were fighting back, and I just want to credit them for their courage in those moments. And my heart breaks as I'm just trying to imagine, being at church in a sacrament service and something like that happened. I also have heard that when he first crashed his truck into the building, that people went to go check that he was okay, and then he started firing on them, and just can't imagine how scary that is, having with elderly people, young children. No matter how you feel about the LDS Church or any other church, this was completely awful and horrific and unjustified, and this shouldn't happen to anyone who goes to their sacred space where they're meant to be safe and to worship. And it's really sad this happened. The Michigan office of the FBI said the attack was being investigated as an act of targeted violence. FBI Director Kash Patel said that Sanford reportedly hated people of the Mormon faith, and a Burton City Council candidate told reporters that Sanford called LDS church members the Antichrist when the two had met a week before the attack. Friends said Sanford's frequently expressed animosity towards church members began after a relationship with an LDS woman a decade prior had ended badly. So it appears that this was deliberately targeted, somebody who was very hostile, saw Mormons as the Antichrist, and often we get a lot of that rhetoric online by people of other denominations or faiths that we're not Christian because of our theological views of the nature of God. People can sometimes refer to us as, a cult, or that we're following the devil, not really following Christ. And obviously, this is someone who's really extreme, who had extreme anger, and I know he served in the military and had, served in the War of Iraq, and who knows if there is any PTSD or, um, but I just can't understand how he would do that and kill innocent people. And we hear about a lot of these shootings on the news, but I think this one hits home because these are fellow Latter-day Saints. And my thoughts and my prayers go to the family and the friends of the victims, and to all those who were there. What a traumatic thing, and a terrible, horrific thing. And, I talked about this a little bit with the Charlie Kirk assassination, how there is a lot of this animosity, this us versus them. There can be this hate speech to people of the other side, and it can cause the wrong person to commit acts of violence. Somebody who's a bit crazy or a bit unhinged, to do acts of violence. And I think we have to mourn this and try as much as we can, as President Nelson said, to be a peacemaker. There's lots of fears now about, especially for people in the States, about security and being safe going to church. Because if I was living in the States or certainly close to this area, I would feel unsure about my safety going to church and that of my family. I was reading today in this manual, in Doctrine and Covenants manual, and catching up on his chapter on Doctrine and Covenants 98, and some things stood out to me and I think are perhaps relevant at this time. He talked about how the saints were victims of unjust persecution. This happened in Missouri, and that the Lord wanted them to not use violent measures, but to try to settle their conflicts peacefully. He says on page 234, the Lord's law of retribution, as given to ancient prophets, is reiterated in verses 23 to 31. The saints must first seek peace with their enemies and act in self-defense, not in aggression. They're asked to bear their trials patiently and seek non-violent solutions to conflict. Someone who exemplified this he shares the account of Bishop Edward Partridge. He was the leader and the bishop of the Saints in Missouri. And on the 20th of July, 1833, that's when a mob came and they destroyed the printing press, and he was taken out and tarred and feathered, and they were driven out of Jackson County. And he says, before tarring and feathering me, I was permitted to speak. I told them the saints had to suffer persecution in all ages of the world, that I had done nothing which ought to offend anyone, that if they abused me, they would abuse an innocent person, that I was willing to suffer for the sake of Christ. But to leave the country I was not then willing to consent to it. By this time the multitude made so much noise that I could not be heard. Until after I had spoken, I knew not what they intended to do with me, whether to kill me, to whip me, or what else I knew not. I bore my abuse with so much resignation and meekness that it appeared to astound the multitude, who permitted me to retire in silence, many looking very solemn, their sympathies having been touched as I thought. And as to myself, I was so filled with the spirit and love of God that I had no hatred towards my persecutors or anyone else. And then Casey says, Bishop Partridge's actions under these circumstances demonstrate the validity of the Lord's counsel to the saints, his meekness in the face of unjust persecution. And in section 98, verse 33, the Lord says, This is the law that I gave unto mine ancients, that they should not go out unto battle against any nation, kindred, tongue, or people, save I, the Lord, commanded them. And if any nation, tongue, or people should proclaim war against them, they should first lift a standard of peace unto that people, nation, or tongue. Then I, the Lord, would give unto them a commandment and justifying them in going out to battle against that nation, tongue, or people. And I, the Lord, would fight their battles. And this was a statement given by the First Presidency under Heber J. Grant, J. Reuben Clark, and David O. McKay. I believe this would have been the Second World War. They say the church is and must be against war. The church itself cannot wage war unless and until the Lord shall issue new commands. It cannot regard war as a righteous means of settling international disputes. These should and could be settled, the nations agreeing by peaceful negotiation and adjustment. While righteous men in the scriptures, such as Gideon, Captain Moroni, or Mormon, were skilled commanders and generals, they were also men at peace, who fought for the right reasons. Speaking of the righteous Nephites, the Book of Mormon declares, they were sorry to take up arms against the Lamanites, because they did not delight in the shedding of blood. Yea, and this was not all. They were sorry to be the means of sending so many of their brethren out of this world into an eternal world unprepared to meet their God. So I just want to say that I'm very saddened by these things which have happened. I think this is shocking for Latter-day Saints and former members as well, or those who, I guess just anyone in humanity. This is a tragedy. It was nice to see people coming together outside the church from different faiths praying. And I think that's what we need a lot this time, is to come together in unity, to put down our weapons of wars, to focus less on our differences, and to have less animosity. And I'm expecting this will be addressed at General Conference. I think we need some words of hope and light at this time, and a message to the world and to the church. So I just wanted to share that with you all. Keep safe. There's a lot going on in the news right now, and if you're having some mental or emotional struggles at the moment, give yourself some space to maybe just separate and take a break from this. Go outside, walk in the fresh air. I'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye.